If you can imagine your thoughts, it's like a roll of old 35mm film that cameras used to have. I guess you can still get cameras that take that sort of film, but each roll of film, the negatives are a series of images with a small black line that separates them. In the Course in Miracles, Jesus says, imagine your thoughts as an oddly assorted procession going by. And it's one thing to simply let it go by and to see the procession, but the mind becomes fixated on the procession, on a particular aspect of the procession, and then all of a sudden it's drawn into it and makes stories about it, and I like that particular part of the procession, rather than being simply the observer of the procession. It joins in and becomes entangled. Much like a roll of 35mm film. You would have your camera and you'd go out and you'd take a picture of your friends and family on this particular image, and then there would be a little black line separating the negative, the cellulose plastic, and the next image, a picture of the Eiffel Tower or something. And when you would develop the film, you would go into the red room with the red light so that you didn't spoil the film, and you could expose all of the images. You can pull all the film out of the container without risking it that the light would overexpose everything. And you would hold them up, much like an oddly assorted procession of images going by, and you'd be able to identify, oh, there's my friends and family, there's the Eiffel Tower, etc., 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 until the end of the film, the end of the roll. But in between each image and in between each procession, there is a marking point. There is a black line on the film, and in a procession, there's the people in the procession representing this, and then there's a float, and then there's this, and there's a gap between each image, each exhibit in the procession. And because in the case of a roll of film, you're only interested in looking at the images, you don't really notice the gap. It's like a train. There's carriages, if you imagine a circus train, and this carriage has the monkeys, this carriage has the elephants, this carriage has the camels, etc. But they're all joined. There's a little gap, and they're all joined together by something, a little linking. But the focus is on the interesting things, the things that the mind gives focus to, unless, of course, you're a real train buff and you like the way they're linked together. You'd look at the links. And same as if you're a photographic film producer, you'd probably look at the quality of the overall film and everything. But in your thoughts, as they go past, the idea of the cellulose film, if you were to take that idea and transpose it to a movie where it plays 24 frames per second, the images are going past so quickly that you don't notice the little black line at all. You can't even see it. All you're seeing is a repetition of a slightly changing image every instant, 24 of those changing images per second. So quickly your mind doesn't really perceive the change. It's like a flip corner book where you draw a little stick figure in the corner of all the pages and you flip through it and it moves. That's what you're looking at. You don't see the space in between each page. You're just seeing the image moving. So in meditation and in mind training, when you learn, and I like in the end, towards the end of A Course in Miracles in the workbook, Jesus says, now we say God is, and we cease to speak. That's ceasing to speak, right? Because thoughts manifest, for me anyway, having a left brain or an artistic brain, I suppose, thoughts manifest as imagery in my mind, like very profoundly. At least they used to. But when you cease to speak, what happens is you're entering into a moment of stillness, into a moment of silence, just as if you were to slow down or to stop that roll of movie film, and all of a sudden you would begin to see the little break, the little black line in between each image, which you didn't see before, which you didn't notice was there and didn't realize was there. Much the same in the train when it's going by so fast. You're quickly focusing on the carriages to identify what each one is. You're not interested in the thing that links them together particularly. Well, that little gap, that little space, that place of silence in the next thought that you don't have is the here and now in your meditative purpose, in your meditative practice. It's the present. All of a sudden, the mind is no longer fixated on the procession going by. It's still, and it can see what's actually occurring. It can see that silent space, that little empty place. And when the mind learns to focus on that empty place, at first it takes great practice. At first in your meditations, you might find you're not able to still the mind at all. You might have great trouble even slowing down your thoughts or just detaching from your thoughts, stepping back as the observer. But practice makes perfect. A lesson repeats until it is learned, and meditation, like anything else, whilst it's part of the illusory realm, like everything else, it is a practical application of mind. That one is not something that people do all day, every day. It's something that you teach yourself and that you educate yourself regarding as an auxiliary interest, perhaps initially. And two, it's something that brings great benefit, and scientific studies even into meditation have proven that. As far as physical sense of well-being and emotional sense of well-being are concerned. And if you look into some of the studies of Buddhist monks, you'll realize that in meditation they can slow their heart rate, etc., which I can do. It's not difficult to do particular things with your meditative acumen, but the point of meditation is to enter into that place of no mind, or that place of being the observer, being so detached or so removed from the attitude of participating with thoughts that are going by, that you begin to recognize something else. You begin to recognize in your mind the awareness of a sense of attraction that seems to reach out to you from within the little space between your thoughts. It's as if it pulls you in or calling you in, like a mermaid, like a siren. There's this sort of call. And you feel that. It's a feeling. One of the lessons in the course, in the reviews, I feel this stirring of God's strength in me. Well, that happens in several ways, and only speaking from my personal self. I remember when I was in my late 20s, I think it was like about 28, 29. I remember very vividly, and this memory has haunted me somewhat for want of better words. A past memory has haunted me in recent weeks, so I guess I'm going to put it out here. But I remember walking down the street in Murwillumbah coming back from one of my adventures in faith where I would take no money, no wallet, no identity, no keys, no nothing. I would leave my house unlocked and open, and I would go away for days on end to visit people or go and have an adventure somewhere and allow myself to be transported by faith, fed by faith, housed by faith, everything just by faith, by people I meet, by the kindness and open-heartedness of others, as an idea of allowing God to provide for me. And I remember stopping on the sidewalk, coming back from this adventure in faith, feeling completely filled up, feeling completely blessed and loved. And I realized in that moment that I was supported by a higher power. There was a higher power. And I didn't know what to do about that, because if there was a higher power, I wanted to know of it directly. I was quite happy to call it God or not call it God or whatever, but it was the higher power. It was the state of my true nature. That's how it felt, where I didn't have to exist or survive, but I was actually supported and sustained, as I am today. And that's called living in faith. But that was an attraction, because once you start to make bold experiments with your faith, it becomes, I guess, an attraction. It becomes an addictive attraction. You really want to. You want to do it again and again, and see what incredible adventures you have, because what you're looking for is that sense of connection. And I recently watched, in fact, yesterday, watched a video of this young woman who went off on some incredible trail into the bush for a year or something, and lived in much the same way, away from society. She went trekking and not exactly living in faith, but just got out of her comfort zone to every parameters that she could. And when she came home, she felt completely uninspired to be home, back in her normal, regular environment, because that sense of adventure and that sense of freedom and that sense of, and it has nothing to do with the way you experience it, it's the sense of it that you're looking for, was gone. She was back in the comfort zone and, familiar. And I remember having a similar experience when I lived on the commune for some time without electricity and all of that sort of thing. There was this sense of connection to nature. And that was long before, well, it wasn't long before, a year or so before my illumination, but the sense of connection to nature, the sense of liberty, the sense of freedom that you have, being not attributable to what seems to be going out on in form, but inclusive of it, as the catalyst for experiencing that sense, is something that when you're meditating and you focus on that inner sense of quietness and being and stillness, the call, it's like an energetic drawing in that you feel. And people have described it, and I would describe it as a kind of a whoosh, like a being sucked in. And it's the same thing. It's freedom. Salvation is offering you your freedom from the containment of living a conceptually oriented life rather than a spontaneous kind of, when Jesus says, I've come that you may have life and have it more fully, you cannot have anything more fully than life itself. The only way you can have it more fully is to be able to experience it in the world, which is an incredible gift. It is the gift. Like literally, it is the gift to be able to experience. I mean, in eternity, we're all the same. We're all one, and everything is a singularity. And there is nothing but liberty. But being nothing but liberty There's nothing to oppose it or to back it or to give an opposite to it. It's just a singular state. There's no appreciation for it. There's no understanding of it. It's just the way you are, like a tree is a tree. If you had an experience of being a tree and then came back to being a person, you'd be like, wow, I was a tree and then I was back to a person. You'd be able to experience it as something that's not you, and then all of a sudden you understand what being the tree is, if that makes sense. So in the world, you experience yourself as a person, firstly in an ignorant state where you don't know why you're here or what's going on. And then after you've been particularly meditative and prayerful and diligent with your application of forgiveness for some time, you become revelation ready and have a revelation. The revelation shows you what you truly are. And it gives you a profound appreciation for this experience of what you truly are not, but seem to be experiencing yourself as for a moment. When you meditate and you enter into that silence, that drawing in, and it's so quick. It's so quick. You don't even have time to even really comprehend it. I mean, as soon as your mind goes back into analysis, you're engaging with thoughts about it and it takes you out of the state. But afterwards, if you allow yourself to be drawn into the light, which is what happens, then when you come back, or when you find yourself back in your body, like it's in the blink of an eye, you're aware of perhaps just a glimpse. You've caught a glimpse of your true nature. You can't stay in your true nature for long because it would render the body dead. Cactus. You have to come back and keep the heart pumping and the blood flowing and the lips moving so that you can be useful to the atonement. But those moments are accumulative. Those moments of entering directly into light are accumulative, and they build up in the mind, in the conscious mind, in the mind that seems to find itself as separate. It isn't really separate. Seems to find itself as separate and builds the witness to not being separate or being whole. You begin to understand the holiness of all living things in the form as well as through the experience internally in your own conscious and higher conscious connectivity. So learning to be still. I mean, it's often that the gift of being human, the gift of this transitional process, is overlooked, especially from Eastern disciplines. There tends to be a great focus on the idea that you don't exist, you're non-existent, and so be it. Perhaps you're not, and you are, and I can tell you you're not. You don't exist. But that doesn't remove you immediately from where you are. Where you are, you've still got the work to do to finish the soul journey and fulfill the learning requirement that you chose in this soul journey, in this particular incarnation, before you came here. It doesn't do you any good to have a head full of concepts where you're wandering around poo-pooing on everything conceptually and spiritually because you have this very rudimentary understanding that nothing exists and that it's all an illusion. So what if it's all an illusion? I still seem to find myself here experiencing this illusory physical happening through this particular avatar. And when I say I find myself here, I'm not talking about I, the David. I'm talking about I, mind, higher mind, Christ mind, Christ, awake in the dream. It is a dream. I know it's a dream. Big deal. Jesus says in the Course, the opposite of life is not death, it's another form of life. So here I am experiencing myself in my own dream as another form of life with this thing that we've now decided to call an avatar. So in order to be able to better delineate between mind and body, And good on it. I mean, hooray. The emperor has no clothes, perhaps, but what does it matter? Wouldn't you rather be happy? Wouldn't you rather be at peace and be able to enjoy this experience for whatever it seems to be that is the most you can get out of it, as in the gift that Jesus brings? I've come to offer you life, and life more fully, with this greater understanding. I think it's a great shame to get caught up in the zen of things and to try and present oneself as enlightened or whatever. I mean, I'm enlightened. Let's look at it that way. I'm enlightened. My situation has been enlightened. I've experienced direct union with God as an idea of I, higher mind, awakening in eternity where I actually already am, which also transfers through the avatar into the residue of the false belief, into the false association, and becomes a focal point for association here within the framework of the dream. You can't exist within the framework of the dream without an association, without a temporal association, a story, an idea of past, future, and present manifestation, because the body is the symbol of ego, and ego is the domain of consciousness. It is the physical domain, and so be it. It's not good or bad. It just is what it is. It's not the opposite of life. It's another form of life. So in the Course, Jesus says that the teacher of God will be the last identity that you have, and that you cannot call yourself a teacher of God until you've completed the workbook of the Course in Miracles. Well, having completed the workbook and having been told by Jesus directly that I'm done, I find myself simply still within the framework of time and space, knowing that that's not true, that I am not actually here, but whoop-de-doo. Once you know it, you don't need to prove it to yourself again and again and maintain this kind of I'm still here, but I'm not here kind of persona or presentation. I mean, it becomes tedious. It may be a stage you go through, but your focus more becomes on simply that state of being, that state of awareness where everything is a blessing in the world, and that singular blessing, that single state of wow, that single state of presence, albeit illusory, albeit just another story, is really quite the most magnificent thing. It's just beautiful. It is a true blessing. Your awakening is the greatest blessing that you can give to your world. It's like, if you can imagine 8 billion of us, however many there is today, 8 billion conscious associations, each one of us as a whole are a singularity. There's not, we are all connected. There's no connection. We are one, as above, so below. I'm always meeting myself wherever I go, making videos for other aspects of myself, which are not really other aspects. They are other potential, or they are potential experiences of myself through the seeming presentation of others. And let's say, as I sit here, no one need even know that I'm here. No one need even know that I, through this avatar, am awake. None of that. Because the maximum give, the maximum blessing, that I can extend outward into the dream, that I can project, if you like, or that I can create into the world through this avatar, occurs through its awakening, occurs through the awakening of that section of the conscious mind that is manifesting this avatar. And one of the things I love in the Course too is a line that I always sort of sit in this line. I find myself here all the time. Jesus says that those who are certain, right, and certainty is of God, those who are certain can afford to wait and wait patiently. I could wait here on this lovely couch for the rest of time and space if this avatar were capable, but I no longer feel this angst to be about anything. I still have any things that I'm about, but breakfast. He doesn't like breakfast. As a dream of being about things. You transition from a dream of denial to a dream of awakening, to an awakened state, having had revelations, depending on, if you're a Buddhist, you would say that I've had samadhi, or several experiences of samadhi, which are non-physical states that show you ever-increasing awarenesses of the true identity or the true nature of your celestial being, which those states accumulate into finally the illumination or the enlightenment of your mind. Similarly with revelation, it's the same thing. You'll have all sorts of experiences of non-temporal arrangements that will collaborate together to build a greater witness and culminate in the illumination of your mind, the enlightenment of your mind, which brings everything together in one single instant. And that experience, every experience blesses everyone. Right? Every practice, every application of applying forgiveness blesses everyone everywhere all at once. Just as my thoughts of denial condemn everyone everywhere all at once. But as we transition from thoughts of denial, as we transition from references that seem to maintain and perpetuate engagement in the world, we realize the world is just energy, and our energetic vibration is omnipotent, literally omnipotent in the true sense. And I have experienced many well-meaning individuals who begin upon the journey of awakening, who think, just as the disciples thought that Jesus had come to liberate them from the Roman occupation as a people, think that the path of spirituality is somehow connected to making a difference in the world by protesting government positions or counteracting environmental degradation or any kind of anything in the world. Jesus simply calls you to be in the world but not of it. He tells you the poor will always be amongst you. Don't trip over the opportunities that are placed in front of you on your own spiritual path, but you're not asked to become someone who fixes the social justice spectrum to stabilize that, or balance. There's nothing more unstable than the notion of balance. Think about that. But your awakening is the maximum potential you have to be of service to the sonship. And if you're not about that in full participation, then you're actually about the denial of that and actually perpetuating the condemnation of the sonship through association of physical identification with it. And it's going to be hard to break free from that. You begin to understand that those images that you think are your brothers and sisters out there are not your brothers and sisters. That's the form association that are being projected onto them by mind asleep. I remember walking down the street in Byron Bay one day after about a 3 or 4 hour satsang and with my teacher, and I was feeling on top of the world. I was feeling incredible. And I was walking up towards the beach on the footpath, and there was a lot of people coming towards me and going my way, like a very busy footpath, comings and goings of people. And in my heart, I was so joyous. I'm thinking, wow, these are all my brothers. These are all my brothers. And all of a sudden, the whole image, the whole picture faded as like a dimmer switch on a light, as if somebody in the celestial heavens there turned the dimmer switch down and everything sort of faded out to this kind of almost neutral grey. And right here, I could see this sort of crystalline silhouette, or a white, much the same as you can see the light in the edges of my beard here. I could see that around every person, but right in the forehead, right in the third eye, which is a very mystical sort of reference that people like to use, was this brilliant white light in each one. Tiny, tiny little point of light. I think in Krishna consciousness they say that you reside somewhere here, and that your actual size, the actual size of your being, is like 1,000th the thickness of a human hair or something. I don't know, but a pinpoint of light here. That is you. That is my brother. That is what I am. And all of a sudden it all came back. The streets, the people, the imagery, and everything was back to normal. And I I was stopped in my tracks for a second, and I realized that all these years where I was thinking that the body, the physical nature of life, my brothers in the world, was a reference of how my brothers are here in the form, wasn't so. The form is just the avatar, it's just a vehicle. No one gets into their car to drive somewhere and says, I am a car. You're the driver of a car. You're the driver, or you're not even really in the body. It's an illusion. Where you really are is here and now as well, but it doesn't look like this. And I realized my brothers are formless. My brothers are not the body. And in the Course, Jesus says, your brothers are not the body, no more are you. And I really have to take it on board what Jesus tells me, like everything in the Course it's a complete thought system. I was talking with someone the other day who was talking about this later book, A Course of Love, and they were saying how it's the follow-on from A Course in Miracles. Well, it's simply not. There's nothing to follow on from A Course in Miracles, and it says that in the Course if you read it. You get to the point where you have no further use for words, concepts, ideas, thoughts, anything. What comes after that but stillness? I had somebody trying to tell me, well, the Course of Love is the practical application of the mind training of A Course in Miracles. It's like, what? You are the practical application. It's not about another book. This is, you have to understand there will always be another book, A Course of Love, or Gary Renard just brought out another book, When Buddha and Jesus Knew Themselves, or something, or The Two Marys, I think it's called. It's like, when does it stop? When do you just take Jesus at his word that you're whole and perfect? Well, let me just read this other book because it might help me, blah, 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 blah. That's all defense. Blah, blah, blah. Ready? Feel that. That's our true communication. Communication is seen in light, A Course in Miracles. Communication is seen in light. It's also experienced through the avatar as an upwelling of joy and happiness. Call it your, what's that when you, dopamine or whatever the thing in your thing. Well, it's not that, it's better than that. Pardon me. Who cares if you're a concept of yourself as an avatar, an idea that doesn't exist, just another story telling another story about light and enlightenment and from something that happened in the past and that you're going to utilize until the end of time, whatever in the future, whatever that might be. True communication is here and now. Right? Don't get caught up in the concepts. Don't get caught up in all of that Zen mastery nonsense. There's no such thing. If you really understand it, there's no such thing. Just be happy. Just be here and now. Rekindle that communicative link. Live in faith. Get out of your goddamn comfort zones and just, what have you got to lose? What are you so afraid of? You're not afraid of death. I guarantee you. The true fear is love. You're afraid to love. You're afraid to be in love with yourself. Inclusive of the avatar, inclusive of the person telling the story about that fearful premise. The opposite of life is not death, it's another form of life. Transition from Homo sapien to Homo illumina. And just stay put. Stay in that place. Those who are certain can afford to wait and wait patiently. Come and wait with me if you're certain, if you've had an experience and you don't know how to put it into context, and we'll wait together and it will be put into context all by itself without any kind of conscious processing whatsoever. It really is a joke. It really is just quite funny, the whole thing. For no reason at all. I love you. Peace.